talk to you about greenhouses in this segment. This is a wireless thermometer from one of the two greenhouses we have out back. It's 26 degrees outside, and you can see it hit a high of 91 in that greenhouse this afternoon. It's now going on 5 in the evening. The sun is getting low in the western sky, so the temperature has dropped a little bit, but it hit a high of 91 today on a 26 degree day in my greenhouse. You can see the interior temperature in my home is 68 degrees. Last night, when it was down in the 20s last night, the lowest temperature in the greenhouse was 53 degrees. So the greenhouses are very important to gardening, especially if you're going to grow things that are tropical. Like pineapples, plumerias, and myriad other things that we'll talk about. I wanted to show you this thermometer first, and we're going to go out and look at the greenhouses next. I just wanted you to see what a difference. It's actually warmer in my greenhouse right now, 78 degrees, than it is in my physical house, 68 degrees. I've moved outside now. We actually have two greenhouses on our property. This is a temporary structure. It's behind my house, right up against the house, and this is where we grow banana trees. There's a banana tree patch inside this greenhouse. And this is basically made out of a stick together pole barn. You know, the pole tents that you buy with the canopy that goes over, and you put the canopy on with the little bungee straps, and the legs slide into the elbows and everything slides together. That's basically what this is. We had one a few years ago that got caught up in the wind and ripped loose from the anchors we had in the ground during a summer storm, and it bent it up a little bit. Also, the cover had gotten to where it was leaking and gone bad, so we actually reconfigured it with pieces of another one that we had found in a junkyard, and we turned it into a temporary greenhouse. We actually build this structure every fall over and around the banana trees, and then buy a big roll of 6 mil plastic. That's all that is, just 6 mil plastic from your local big box building supply store. And we wrap the plastic around there. You can see we have up there, there's a couple of ratchet straps that we've hooked together to go around the perimeter that we tightened everything down with to kind of give it some structural integrity. But it's just a temporary, simple greenhouse that keeps our banana trees from dying back in the winter to the ground. Most people in this southeast coastal Georgia area will just let their banana trees get killed by the winter cold and die to the ground and come back from the root. We actually winter ours over, and by growing our banana trees for 2 seasons, we're actually able to get some of them to produce bananas, which, you know, is really kind of cool. You know, whether you eat them or not, these produce the little miniature bananas. They are edible, and it's just the novelty, the idea that you can grow bananas successfully down here in southeast coastal Georgia. And it's kind of cool to see. It puts out a really big purple flower and the petals open one at a time in a spiral manner around the flower as the stalk extends out, and there's a bunch of bananas underneath each flower petal that starts to grow and develop into a bunch spiral around the big arm that hangs out of the banana tree. So it's really kind of cool to do it if you've never done it, but that's what we do. Kate got these banana trees with her daddy when she was a very little girl. They grew them up in Atlanta. We transplanted some of them down here to the Savannah area when she married me, and we moved here. And we've grown banana trees ever since, and Gus is gone now, but we grow the banana trees in his memory. Even though Gus used to dig his up and store them in the garage every year, which is one way you can do it. If you live in this area, you don't want to put them in a greenhouse, you can actually cut all the leaves off except the last leaf, dig them up, clean the roots off a little bit, stick them on a piece of cardboard or burlap in the corner of your garage away from the door where they won't get frozen, and then put a little throw the burlap cloth over them or something and over the root balls, and then pour a little water on them once a month. They'll go dormant, and then when you plant them in the ground in the spring with plenty of fertilizer and pump the water and the heat to them, they'll go to growing again, and that's how you winter them over if you want to dig them up. But that's a lot of work. I'm not as young as I used to be, so we just build the tent around them. And the tent serves more than that. I'm going to show you inside here in just a moment. We also have a permanent greenhouse. This greenhouse we built about 15 years ago. It's made out of I get my words backwards, polycarbonate panels, and they're kind of a corrugated material, like you would say, like a cardboard. But instead of being opaque like cardboard, they're clear. They're polycarbonate, and this polycarbonate doesn't get brittle like plastic. It lasts for, you know, up to 20 years or longer. This particular polycarbonate from this greenhouse manufacturer has a UV protectant on it, so it lasts a lot longer than it might normally would. We'll take a closer look at that greenhouse in a moment. That is our permanent greenhouse. It's there year-round. Now this greenhouse here, we've made ourselves a little door on this side, and basically we slide this old piece of screen door material that we had laying around. It kind of holds the flap in place along with this strap right here, and you open up the flap, and it's kind of a double offset flap affair so that the wind actually blows and closes the flap instead of opening it. And you can see this greenhouse is slap full of tall banana trees and other things. We have a heater down here, a space heater, an 1800 BTU electric space heater. We have a drum of water over here, a 55-gallon drum that's got black plastic on it. It's a blue plastic drum. We cover it in a black plastic bag, and that's full of water. It actually heats the water during the day, and then the water helps to stabilize the temperature. The warm water in there helps to stabilize the temperature in the greenhouse on cold nights. We also have a fan sitting over here that we've hung on the wall, and it's pointed up to the roof here of the greenhouse. Since this greenhouse is not double wall, it's single plastic sheet, we actually want to rotate the hot air rises. We're bringing the hot air up and bringing it back down and running it in a circular pattern to keep the hot air circulated in here. We don't have to keep it hot in here. We just need to keep it above 32 degrees so things don't freeze. You see, we've got some hanging baskets that we put in here to keep the other greenhouse from being overcrowded. And you see the banana trees down there, and they're doing quite nicely. The stems are still green, big trunks. Now this banana tree here is a good 15, 16 feet tall. It will probably produce bananas this summer. Once that happens, we'll cut it down to the ground. We'll just cut it off right there at the ground, and it'll put little baby banana trees up around the base of it, and those will grow up like this little one right here and become mature banana trees like this one. There's an even bigger one over there. That one's probably a 25-footer there. And also, if you look at the base, there's a little one next to it, and if we were to pull things back, there's even some smaller ones. Also in here we have Hawaiian plumeria, which is what this tree here is. You can see this particular plumeria still has some leaves on it. And these are a succulent type tree. They grow all over the Hawaiian Islands, and many of the flowers that you see on a lot of the leis that people wear around their neck and they smell so wonderful are these Hawaiian plumeria trees right here. They will not survive in the winter, so we keep them in the greenhouse so they can't get frozen. Now they do get cool enough and the days are short enough here that they drop a lot of their leaves, but other than that, they stay alive, and as soon as it warms up and the days get longer, they go to growing again. We also have a lot of citrus in here, and you can see the thorns on that citrus right there. We have citrus in here. There's another big thorny citrus. Look at the size of the thorns on citrus. A lot of people don't realize that's longer than the first digit on my index finger. That's a good 1.25 inches long, and they are sharp. Don't fool yourself. They will eat you alive. Most people don't realize that citrus trees are so thorny, but they are. We also have one over here. This is a Meyer lemon. You can see it's about to bloom. It's got a lot of flowers. It even has some flowers that are already in bloom, and it smells magnificent in here because of those citrus blooms. So there's nothing that smells quite as wonderful as a citrus tree when it's in bloom. This right here is one of several pineapple plants. There's actually 3 pineapple plants in this pot. I wanted to show you something on these pineapple plants. The leaves on these things are serrated like worse than a knife. See all those teeth? They run the full length of these leaves on the pineapple plants, and what we have to do to move these things, you see all these leaves that are cut back? About 2 months ago when we moved these in here, it's February now, the 1st of February, but 2 months ago in October, October, November, December, actually 3 months ago when we moved these in here, all the leaves were cut short. We call it giving them a haircut. We just lop everything off so that we can actually get to the pot without it eating us alive with these serrated leaves, and move them. All of these tall leaves that you see here have grown since we put these in the greenhouse. So these bad boys do not slow down. They love the greenhouse environment, and they just keep growing year round. And we get several full-size pineapples off of each of these plants every year, at least one pineapple per plant. An interesting thing about the pineapples, they will not produce on the same plant twice. So once a plant grows up, produces a pineapple, which is actually the flower, which the fruit develops under the flower, that's the head of the pineapple that you normally lop off, and that's what you plant back into a pot of garden soil or potting soil to grow a pineapple plant, and it will come to maturity, bear flower and bear a pineapple. And then what you have to do is cut that plant off at the base, and it'll put new plants up, little babies like the banana trees, up around the mother plant that you cut off, and those will bear the next season's pineapples. Now I'm going to get out of here, and we're going to close this back up because, again, it's a 26-degree day. It's plenty warm in there, as I showed you the wireless thermometer. I'm going to close this back up to keep the wind and the cold out of this greenhouse. So there, we've just got that screen door under that strap and a couple bricks hold it in place at the bottom, and if the wind hits it, it actually ends up closing it instead of getting inside. Now we're going to walk over here to the permanent greenhouse, show you a few of the features of that. This permanent greenhouse is 8 feet wide, 12 feet deep, 6 feet high at the peak. So it's comfortable to stand in and work in. Now you can see at the door here, I started pulling out all of my seed trays. I'm going to start getting these ready and cleaned up and filling these with seed starter mix next week to start our early spring vegetables. Things from the cabbage family, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, any form of cabbage, whether it's an oriental type cabbage like bok choy and all of those types of things, plus regular stonehead type cabbages. All of that's going to get started in these seed trays. Other things like carrots, let's see what else. Peas, any of your snap peas or sugar peas, all of those are going to direct sow into the garden itself in the next week or two. But we're going to start our other more cold sensitive things here that can't handle a freeze in our little greenhouse. You'll see I've got a double door here, and there's a vent on this side, and then down here on the other end there's a vent on the back left corner. So this has two vents on it. I'm going to open this up. We have, it is nice and toasty in here, nearly 80 degrees. You don't want to stand here too long and sweat. We have a chameleon keeping ourselves warm inside of our greenhouse. This right here is a vent opener. These things cost about 30 bucks. You can order them through most greenhouse suppliers. And the way they work is there is an oil-filled cylinder here with a piston that comes up here to the lift mechanism. There's a set of tension springs that will push the piston closed as the sun sets and the temperatures cool. So this thing will automatically open your vent as it gets hot. The hotter it gets, the wider the vent will open until it's fully open in the middle of the day. And then in the evening, as the sun sets and the air temperatures cool, this vent will gradually close all the way to keep the heat that you stored in the greenhouse for the night. Here we are at the little green greenhouse, the green greenhouse, that's cute to say. This one is the one that's right at, I don't know, I think this is 8 feet wide. It's 6 feet high here at the center, and it is, I can't remember, it's either 12 or 14 feet long. I think it's 12 feet long. But it's got a lot of plants in it. You can see we've got plants hanging. I put a rail system up in here, and I've also run water all around this thing, so I can set up drip irrigation and water things. And you can see we hang things. We also have shelving units here. I don't know if you can see those right there. There's the two legs on them. They're double shelf units. We store spring planting supplies on the lower shelves. We put the plants on the upper shelves. And you can see all the hanging baskets, and everybody looks happy in here. A lot of tropical plants in here. And you can see there's some gladiolas. They're blooming. You can see other things blooming in here. The real cool thing is these Hawaiian plumeria. There's another one blooming right there. You see these Hawaiian plumerias right here. See how lush the leaves are. They really like this little greenhouse. It stays a little bit warmer in this one. And these are just some little pieces that we brought back from our spring trip to Hawaii. And you can see that was just a little stick about 6 inches long, and now it's already sprouted and grown 2 branches out here and grown another. It must be 3 feet tall now. It grew all of that during the summer. So these things grow 3 to 5 feet a year, these plumeria. And you can keep cutting them back if you want them a certain size, but this is how they grow. There's another one right there that sprung out into a triple branch setup, and these will bloom this year. We bought these on Oahu when we were visiting our friend Mary, and these are 3 different colored flowers from the ones we currently have. Back here you can see pineapple plants. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a 6th one there in the way back there. Some more hanging baskets and various other things. So this is what we do. What did I call that? Did I call that a gladiola? That's a geranium. I'm sorry. I'm getting my G's mixed up. Those are geraniums right there. You can see they're blooming right here in the greenhouse. They normally only bloom during the summer, but if you keep them in the greenhouse, they bloom right on. And this is going on. This is Sunday, and this is the last. We're fixing to start the last week in January, and then this month will be over. And so I'm going to head and getting my area cleared out here. I've moved all the plants, and I've got my heat mat right here. This is a nice little rubberized mat. It's UL listed. It creates a nice gentle heat. You can see right here what it does, and you've got a chart here that tells you what temperatures for what things, and this little mat will do that for you. And you can hook this mat to a thermostat, or you can plug it into a timer. There's a couple different ways to do it. And this mat, you will fill your seed trays and sit them right on top of this mat right here. And you may not even want to sit them directly on the mat. You may want to put a little shelf on here that's up a few inches off of it and sit them on that, depending on what temperature you want them. But it emits a nice little heat that works up through the soil, heats your seeds to get your seedlings started for spring planting, which is what we're fixing to do this week. So I've cleared this area out, washed off the mat, and really I'd like to purchase another one of these mats. Also, I've got all of these used seed trays that I use every year, and I use them over and over and over again. These I've gotten from people that have donated to me and gotten them from the garden shops when they throw them out after they take plants out of them. And of course I've bought some plants with seedlings in them, and I save them and just reuse them. So that's the greenhouse there. You can see I've got just one of those little bullet heaters down there. I call it a little bullet heater. It's just one of those little heaters that's 12 inches tall and 5 or 6 inches wide. Little ceramic heater. It heats this whole greenhouse. Also, you'll notice we have our little rotating color wheel. That has nothing to do with growing plants and nothing to do with maintaining the greenhouse, and everything to do with just fun and whimsy. That's one of those color wheels like you would put under a tinsel Christmas tree and changes colors as the light wheel turns around. Well, guess what? When you hang it in the greenhouse and let it spin around like that, once the sun sets, the greenhouse changes colors all night long. It makes it attractive to look at as part of the landscape. It's just for fun. So that's the inside of both greenhouses, and you're going to see more of this little area here because I'm going to be starting seedlings in the next couple of days and filming that and putting that into another video for you. In our area, southeast coastal Georgia, we can start planting either direct sow seeds for carrots and things like that directly into the garden, even peas, sweet peas like sugar snap peas and shell pea, or not any of your shell summer peas, but all of your sweet peas, you know, the peas that you shell and eat that are sweet, like the little sewer peas that you buy in a can. You can grow those. You can also grow the peas that are in the pods that are edible, what we call the snap peas, that you eat the pea, the pod, and everything. Those grow really well here. You direct grow those starting in February through February the 15th, depending on the weather. You can go ahead and direct sow those in the garden. But things like that are members of what we call the cabbage family, like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, any kind of cabbage, Chinese cabbage, American cabbages, just any kind of cabbage you can think of. Like I said, cauliflower, broccoli are all members of the cabbage family. Also things like Brussels sprouts. All of those can be started from seed right here. And you can also start some mustard greens, some collard greens, all of those types of things you can start in seed trays and get them a head start before it's safe to directly sow them in the soil, before all danger of frost is gone, and you can get them in here and get them a quick start, and then we'll transfer some of those to our hay bale gardening, where we can tent them and protect them on the coldest nights and get a jump start on our garden season. Starting in February to March, we'll be starting our tomato seedlings in here again. Once our cabbage family seasons and cold season seedlings are ready to go into the garden, then we will come in here and start seed trays with our tomatoes and some of our summer things, tomatoes and squashes and melons and all those kinds of things, to give them a jump start. And like I said, I've thought about purchasing another one of these. This size here, which is a I'm thinking this is a let's see, 12. This is like a 19 or 20 inch by 3. I think it's a 3.5 foot mat. It's a pretty good size. You can put about 4 seed trays. If you got the rectangular seed trays and you run them long ways this way, you can get about 4 of them on here. I'd like to do another one on this shelf over here, move all of these plants around in the greenhouse, and do me another one here so I've got a little more productive space. I can do more at once. But you'd be surprised how many seeds you can get started right here on a mat this big. One other note, I get people that ask me all the time when I'm talking about gardening around the house and out in my neighborhood. They say, well, you got a greenhouse, can't you grow tomatoes, bell peppers, eggplants, and things like that all winter long in your greenhouse? And the answer is yes and no. There are 2 things that you have to have in order to grow these things during the winter months. First, you have to have a warm location that protects them from freezing temperatures at night, i.e., the greenhouse. The second thing you have to have is a longer day. What most people assume is that when the temperatures get cold, trees lose their leaves, vegetable plants start to die. But that is not true. That is not what triggers these plants to stop and go into hibernation or to quit producing and die. What triggers this phenomenon is the length of the day. Actually, we hit the summer solstice when we are the longest daylight hours of that particular day, and from that point forward, we start losing daylight. Each day has a shorter sunrise to sunset period and a longer sunset to sunrise period. The nights get longer, the days get shorter. This is what triggers fruit trees and other trees to shed their leaves, what triggers vegetable plants to quit and die. This is the trigger mechanism. Everybody thinks it's the cold, but if you pay real close attention this fall, you'll notice that your trees start dropping their leaves well before it starts getting cooler. Also, in the spring, which is right around the corner here, you'll notice that tree buds and other plant buds start swelling and maybe even start putting out leaves well before all danger of frost is gone and all the cool evenings have finished. And this is because they're being motivated by the length of the day way more than they're being motivated by temperatures. So I said all that to say this: if you want to grow tomatoes and other summer vegetables in your greenhouse, not only do you need a way to keep them warm like a greenhouse, a heat mat, or a heater, but you're also going to have to install, hanging up here, a fluorescent UV light source, a grow light, because you're going to have to give the plants more daylight than they're going to get during the winter months. The days are only 8 to 9 hours long from sunrise to sunset, and you really need about 12 hours of daylight for these vegetable plants to produce and thrive and give you tomatoes during the winter and so forth. So there's what you need. If you're going to do a greenhouse and you're going to try to grow summer vegetables in the winter, you're going to have not only warmth and protection from frost, but you also need the UV light so that you can supplement the daytime hours that these plants get. I've done it. It works fine. You can do it very well. But keep in mind, that's why we can. That's why we dry. That's why we freeze vegetables. That's why it's always been a tradition that people eat soups and stews and chilies and things of this nature during the winter months. Not just because it's cold and it's hearty food with a lot of starch in it, but also because there's no fresh vegetables. Back in the days before modern transportation and you could truck food all over the world in a matter of days and hours, you couldn't buy tomatoes out of season. You couldn't buy melons out of season. You couldn't buy fresh squash and bell peppers and cucumbers in December. They just weren't available here. So if you wanted to eat those foods, you had to dry them, you had to can them, you had to freeze them. And depending on what works best for each vegetable, and some things work good under several type options, but you would use these things during the winter. You couldn't get fresh tomatoes, so you would eat canned tomatoes, sun-dried tomatoes, frozen tomatoes, and you would use them to cook dishes that were delicious. And we still cook these dishes today, even though we don't need to can them. We can get fresh tomatoes year-round. We still like sun-dried tomatoes and canned tomatoes and frozen tomatoes. Same thing with okra and squash and eggplant and all the other stuff. So that's a little note on growing summer vegetables during the winter. UV light, the normal amount of water and fertilizer, and you have to protect them from the cold. But the UV light is necessary. If you've got the greenhouse, you've got the warmth, you've got to add the UV light, or you're going to grow spindly plants and you're not going to produce hardly any summer vegetables. So there you go. We're done looking at the inside of the greenhouse. We'll get a video up real soon where we're starting our seedlings. One last thing about our greenhouse here is during the summer months and during the winter months, we disconnect the little automatic oil charged openers I was showing you earlier, and we keep these vents closed. We do not want to lose any heat during the winter months, so the vents never open. And then during the summer months, we actually prop these vents open permanently. We disconnect the little oil thing and oil opener, and we actually prop these vents up where they cannot close. Another thing that we do to this greenhouse is these two doors end up getting propped open, and they stay open pretty much all summer long. The other thing, the last thing, is I'm going to talk to you about with greenhouses, the permanent. The temporary ones doesn't matter because we're going to take that down in the spring when all danger of frost is gone. But the permanent greenhouse is going to sit here and bake in the sun. Now, we do not want this greenhouse to literally melt. We don't want it to overheat everything that's inside, because we can still use this greenhouse during the summer to start successive plantings of summer vegetables so that everything doesn't come due at the same time and everything doesn't peter out at the same time. So we'll start some squash plants early and then plant them when all danger of frost is gone, and then a few weeks later we'll start some more squash plants and we'll plant those, and a few weeks later we'll start some more and plant those, so that we've constantly plugging in every couple of 2 or 3 weeks. We're putting some fresh squash plants into our garden, so that the ones that we planted earlier that are kind of petering out or getting eaten up by vine borer beetles or anything else, we've always got a fresh supply of plants coming to the garden to continue our harvest all the way up until the next winter. But what you have to do in order to utilize your greenhouse during the summer and prevent overheating to damage the structure and anything you try to grow in it is you need to buy a shade cover. And you can go online and type in greenhouse shade covers. Dozens of companies there. They're all good, and they're generally rated by the percentage of sunlight that they block out, or conversely the percentage of sunlight that they allow through. The manufacturer will tell you how they're rating their sunshade. This one is a 60% filter. It filters 60% of the summer sunlight out, only lets 40% of it through. And I've got one that covers from about here, wraps around the top, and goes down to about the same location on the other side. These covers have metal eyelets all along the edges of them, and you can see I've installed eyelets that I've screwed into the structure here ever so often, and we just use bungee cords. We'll throw this thing over the greenhouse, get it situated. I've actually cut flaps out in it so these vents can sit up with the texture on top, with the sunshade on top, and then we just bungee cord it in place so the wind can't rip it off the structure, and that stays on through the summer. It protects our polycarbonate panels and our plastic structure from overheating and melting, protects the things that we're growing inside from getting scalded by the sun or getting too hot, so that we can continue to start seedlings all summer long to continue our harvest and to keep our garden productive. You know, I'm going to tell you, greenhouse is a wonderful investment. You don't have to have one this big. We've got one this big because we've got so much to store in it from the yard, and we also want to be able to start vegetables. But a simple way to make a greenhouse is to go to your local hardware store or big box department store and buy one of those 4-shelf shelving units. They're about 6 foot tall. They're about 2 foot deep and 3 to 4 foot wide. They're plastic. They snap all together. The shelves are porous. They're a grid pattern. People use them in pantries and storage rooms, but they make a great little greenhouse. You can take that shelving unit, put it in a sunny location behind your house or even inside your house, and you can put your seed trays on the shelves in there and then cover that thing in clear plastic, either 3 mil or 6 mil plastic, and make you a flap on the front that you can close with duct tape or bungee cords or just some spring clamps of some kind, and you can turn one of those shelving units into a fantastic seed starter. Stick it right outside. You can put a little heater in it if you need to. You can put one of those heat mats in there. You can even put UV lights in there if you need to. But you can buy a $20 to $30 shelf, a $7 or $8 roll of plastic, and make yourself a pretty quick greenhouse. Throw you a $15 heater in the bottom of it and get you some seed trays and buy you some seed. And the reason I tell you that's all worth doing is, again, I told you you can use that to start seeds over and over and over again in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, and through the winter, and the thing will pay for itself the first year, because buying already grown seedlings at your store in the spring, there's two problems with that. Number one, you're paying a premium because they did all the work to get it growing for you. Number two, you don't know what condition those seedlings in. They may be over mature, they may be stressed because they haven't been watered properly, and you are limited to the variety you can grow. There are literally hundreds of tomato varieties, maybe 30 to 50 bell pepper varieties, hundreds of hot and sweet pepper varieties, just so many different varieties of everything, cabbages and so forth, and you are limited to the 4 or 5 varieties that they offer you, and sometimes less than that. The other problem you have with buying seedlings from a store, other than that you're limited in variety that you can grow, you're limited, and it's more expensive than growing them yourself. The seed is way cheaper, and growing them yourself in a little homemade greenhouse. The other problem with it is, the other problem with buying your seedlings, depending on your local store to buy your seedlings for your garden, is once the spring is over, you can't buy any more seedlings. If you want to plant more squash in June, if you want to plant more squash in July, if you live in the South, the Southeast, where you can grow all the way up, where you can plant squash as late as August and still harvest before it gets frozen, you're out of luck, because the stores are only going to sell the seedlings through April or May, and then things get real wore out real quick, and there's only the dregs left, and then boom, by June there's nothing to buy. So you have to start from seed by the middle of summer, or you can't grow a continuing garden. So again, a greenhouse like this to store your stuff from your yard and start seedlings, or make yourself a little plastic shelf greenhouse. However you do it, you're going to save money by starting your own seedlings, and you're going to have the whole variety in the seed catalog to choose from. You can grow anything, because you could buy little $1 to $3 packs of seeds, put them in the trays, put them in your little greenhouse, and grow things all summer long. So that's all I'm going to say about greenhouses. We'll cover some more of that as we get our seedlings started in one of the next segments coming up.